Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa la'aqibatu lil muttaqeen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina wa Nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in wa ala man tabi'ahum bi ihsan ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. So, to continue with the same verse that we were discussing for the last couple of weeks, the verse is 219 of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. They ask you about wine and gambling, saying both there is great sin and some benefit for people, and their sin is greater than their benefit. The ayah doesn't actually stop there, it continues, but inshallah the rest of the ayah we'll discuss it at another time. Today's discussion inshallah is going to be in regards to the fiqh of alcohol and gambling. This is a little bit of a difficult topic to discuss because there's so much within it, but I'm going to stick to some of the points. And first we're going to start with, inshallah, with alcohol, and then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala speak a little bit with regards to the fiqh of gambling. So to go into the fiqh of alcohol, we're going to start and the way that I inshallah intend to present this is directly from some fatwa websites, because that's easy for me and easy for you, hopefully, in understanding this. And I'll try to break it down a little bit more. So when it comes to the discussion of alcohol, right? So we've discussed the history behind alcohol, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala banned it, how it was something that was prevalent and was common in the pre-Islamic times, and even within the life of the Prophet, during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the early days of Islam. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala banned it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got rid of it. The same thing happened with gambling. Gambling went through the same stages, where even in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was during the early days of Islam, there was permission for people to gamble, and then it became totally banned. Right? So that was a little bit of what we had discussed, the history of the historical development of these in light of the Quran and the Sunnah. And so the reason that we need to discuss the fiqh within them is because of what actually constitutes alcohol and the challenge that we face within it. So to get a little bit more into it, one of my friends was a mufti here in Canada. He has answered a question that was presented to him in regards to alcohol. He says, in reference to your query, it should be understood that Islamic jurists have divided alcohol into two categories: khamr alcohol and non-khamr alcohol. So if we look at the verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. The word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses for alcohol is khamr. And so alcohol really is broader than just an intoxicant, right? And that's one of the challenges that we face, especially in our modern world, where we have alcohols that are not intoxicants, right? And so from a scientific perspective, there's three major alcohols that they will try to express, right? Out of them, only one of them is consumable, right? The others are not actually even consumable, right? So that's when you talk about from a scientific perspective. So from a purely Islamic perspective, scholars of the Hanafi fiqh, and so what I'm presenting is going to be based on the Hanafi fiqh. In the Hanafi fiqh, they've differentiated between khamr alcohol and non-khamr alcohol. Khamr alcohol has been classified as that alcohol which is derived from dates and grapes, whereas non-khamr alcohol is that alcohol which is derived from anything else. When we say derived, we have to understand what that means. When you get alcohol as we understand it is an intoxicant, something that clouds the mind. That's where you get the word khamr from. Yukhamiru al-aql. It clouds the mind, right? So when a person becomes intoxicated, their mind is clouded, they're not able to think straight, and that's the effects of alcohol. So over here they're mentioning that khamr is that which has been derived from dates and grapes. What do you mean by derived from dates and grapes? So dates and grapes by themselves are not a problem, right? Um, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about, uh, about grapes in the Quran, تَتَّخِذُونَ مِنْهُ سَكَرًا وَرِزْقًا حَسَنًا, right? You take out of that grape intoxicants, but it's also rizqan hasana. There's also good provisions in there for you, right? When Maryam alayhi salam, when Zakaria alayhi salam goes to see Maryam alayhi salam and to see to her needs, she finds her eating grapes, right? Out of season. أَنَّ لَكِ هَذَا قَالَتْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ, right? So the grapes themselves. Khabab ibn al-Arat radiallahu anhu, before he was martyred, when he was kept as a hostage in Makkah al-Mukarramah, the hadith of al-Bukhari, where his captives, the family members of the captive said, we saw him eating grapes when there was no fruits at that time in Makkah. So grapes themselves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided grapes for us as humans, and in these occasions we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is giving grapes to these individuals. So rizqan hasana, there's great provision in there. But interesting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this verse of Surah Al-Nahl, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says, تَتَّخِذُونَ, you make it into an intoxicant, whereas Allah had kept it as a rizqan hasana, as a pure sustenance. So when we talk about, was that possible? We'll just make sure this is not. Okay, still here. All right. Sorry, I wasn't sure what had happened, so I just wanted to make sure. All right. I just wanted to make sure that the brothers on Zoom, can you hear this continuing? Yes.
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. It's just, I don't know, the Zoom account was telling me that I just got a message from Zoom that it signed me out or something like that. So I said, I just want to make sure it's not stop the meeting. All right. So dates and grapes, they go through what you call fermentation. When you take date juice or grape juice and it ferments, when something ferments, it actually loses certain properties. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept this process where the sugars within these and other things can become carbon dioxide, right? And that impacts, so the word ferment actually means to boil. And so heat affects this, and it actually impacts it into becoming where the sugars within it change, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now makes it into something that intoxicates the mind. So until it doesn't ferment, it's perfectly fine. It's in a state which is perfectly halal for a person to drink. The Prophet ﷺ himself would drink nabidh, right? And nabidh is generally soaking dates in water. So the Prophet ﷺ would soak dates into water and then drink that water, right? And so it was fine until obviously it was fine because the Prophet ﷺ would drink it because it wasn't fermented. And so fermentation would be where it actually changed and now it became an intoxicant. And that's what when we say derived, that's what we mean by derived. So if it's from dates and grapes, as soon as dates and grapes ferment, then it's considered khamar. And even a single drop of that is not only haram, it's impure as well. Right? So if a person was to get a drop of that onto their clothing or onto their body, that would be an impurity on their body or an impurity on their clothing. Just like if you were to get a drop of urine onto your body or dropping a drop of blood onto your body or in your clothing, then that would be an impurity, right? And so the same way, this is how khamar would be treated. I remember a friend of mine, he was traveling by plane many years ago, and the person next to him, he actually drank on the plane and then spilt it on him. Right? And now he's in the plane, he's on a flight, he can't even go anywhere, can't wash his clothes are dirty, impure. So this is an impurity, right? So when we say, khamr alcohol, we talk about the idea that as soon as date juice or grape juice becomes fermented, it is now not only an intoxicant, it's also an impurity. Non-khamr alcohol is that which is derived from anything else, right? So Sheikh goes on to mention that non-khamr alcohol is that which is derived from anything else, whether it is honey, barley, wheat, or petroleum. Right now, he mentioned petroleum. You can get alcohols from different things. You can sugars, right? You can get, and so in modern day, what in the traditional, what they did was just left the date juice or the grape juice or other things, and they would ferment naturally. But now you use yeast because yeast has this ability to affect, and so they use yeast in trying to produce alcohol. And so now whenever you get yeast and sugar together, you're going to get this situation where you're going to get small amounts of alcohol that are going to be created, which means that all of your baked products generally are going to have yeast and you're going to have sugar in there. And so this becomes a challenge. So that's why they're separating between khamr and non-khamr alcohol. Non-khamr alcohol, it is not considered as an impurity. It's not even considered as haram. And there's some issues to this. So let's read the discussion here and then we'll try to explain further. It says the ruling with regards to khamr alcohol is that even one drop of it is considered haram, prohibited, and impure. As for non-khamr alcohol, there are two opinions within the Hanafi school of thought. Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani is of the opinion that it carries the same ruling as khamr alcohol. However, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Abu Yusuf are of the opinion that it is permissible to consume non-khamr alcohol in a non-intoxicating amount. As mentioned in your query, due to the fact that the majority of products sold at grocery stores contain some amount of alcohol, and it being very difficult to abstain from using such products, many scholars have issued the fatwa, Islamic legal ruling, based on the opinions of Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Yusuf with the following conditions. So there's 4 conditions that they attach to it. Number 1, so non-khamr alcohol. It is not used as an intoxicant. Number 2, it's not used in the manner that intoxicants are used. Right? It is itself is not used as an intoxicant, nor is it used in the manner that intoxicants are used. Number 3, it is not used in an amount that intoxicates. And number 4, it is not used in vain. Now, Sheikh goes on to mention, I'll just read out the rest of his point before. It says, after consulting many experts in the food manufacturing industry, so this is Sheikh Mufti Ismail Qutwal, who wrote this fatwa. He's a local scholar here, mashallah. Said, after consulting many experts in the food manufacturing industry, we have reached a conclusion that due to high costs, alcohols used as an ingredient in food products are not sourced from dates or grapes. Therefore, the base assumption will be that alcohol in food products is not khamr. However, if one's research proves that the alcohol in a certain product is sourced from dates or grapes, then it would not be permissible to consume it. Based on the above, there is no doubt that those products which do not have alcohol listed as an active ingredient will be permissible to consume, as the amount of alcohol in those products is so minimal that even if one was to consume the product to one's fill, one would not get intoxicated. As for those products which have alcohol listed as an active ingredient, such as vanilla essence, if it is used in a minimal, non-intoxicating amount, as vanilla essence is normally used, it could not be considered haram, prohibited, especially when the purpose of using such products is not the alcohol. Yes, if used in an excessive amount where one fears it may lead to intoxication, it would not be permissible. So he goes on to say, also it should be remembered that as the verdict is being issued on the opinion of Imam Hanifa and Imam Yusuf, rahimahullah, is based on necessity and public predicament, it would be better to abstain from using products when an alternative is easily available, especially in the case where alcohol is listed as an active ingredient. It's also important to note that based on the conditions mentioned above, it would not be permissible to consume a product where alcohol is the main purpose or which is consumed in a manner that intoxicants are consumed, such as alcoholic drinks. Why does he say that at the end? Because dates and grapes, we've mentioned that that's khamr alcohol. That even a drop of it is considered to be impure and is considered to be haram, even though it might not intoxicate a person. One drop of it is not going to intoxicate a person, but it is considered an impurity. As far as non-khamr alcohol, even after it's fermented, a single drop of it is not going to be considered, neither is going to be impure, neither is it going to be haram to consume. And because we live in a time where there's a lot of alcohol, right? If you look at non-Muslim research, and I had a bunch of non-Muslim articles, some websites that talk about alcohols within foods and how many foods contain alcohols, to the point that even there's a discussion whether soft drinks contain alcohol. Small traces of alcohol can be found in soft drinks, to the point that they say even those drinks that clearly state non-alcoholic still have some alcohol, right? Small amounts of alcohol can be found. Flavorings, right? We just talk about flavorings. There's a common question every year in the summer. Is Tim Hortons ice capped halal, right? Ice cappuccino, is it halal? Because there's flavorings in there. There's alcoholic flavorings in there, flavorings which have alcohol in there. So these are challenges, right, that we face. Right? We talk about baked products. They're going to have now that's another discussion, and I was going to bring that up. Everything that ferments does not necessarily mean that it's an intoxicant, right? That's another discussion. But the point over here is that it's not used as an intoxicant, and it's not used in the manner that intoxicants are used. So you might find beer adverts that state that the beer is made from honey, or the beer is made from wheat, or the beer is made from barley. Does that mean that that beer is now permissible to drink? No. Why is it not permissible to drink? It's not khamr, right? It's coming under non-khamr alcohol, because it's still being treated or it's still being consumed as alcohol is, right? Still being consumed as alcohol is. That's one of the conditions. It cannot be used in a manner that intoxicants are used. So if somebody says, well, if I drink some beer and that beer has very minimal alcohol in there, it's not going to intoxicate me, and it's not made from dates, it's not made from grapes, does that mean it becomes permissible? No. And that's very clear in the fatwa, right? So we have to be very clear with it. So the fatwa does help us with a lot of our food products, because like Sheikh mentioned himself, it's a challenge. We're in a society where so many of our food products are going to contain alcohol in them, and people are so oblivious of that. And that's why when I started the discussion, I mentioned that this is greater than what people think it is. It's not as simple as what people think it is. And really, I was going to quote a non-Muslim website that actually pointed out the difficulty for Muslims in the Western world because of the amount of alcohol that's found in so many different products. Right? And they actually quoted Islam, mentioned about Islam specifically, that how difficult that must be. Because not drinking alcohol is one thing, but not consuming alcohol, that's very, very challenging. Now, you have to understand that in other fuqaha, non-khamr alcohol is treated as alcohol. And so that becomes a little bit of a problem. I don't know the rulings on the different fiqhs, so I'm not in a position to make judgments about them, right? I know in the Shafi'i and Maliki schools, there is some discussion regarding, they, as far as I know, they treat all alcohol, all fermented juices as alcohols. They just consider it the same. The Hanafis are the one that separate between the non-khamr and the khamr. Right? So it does become challenging, like I said, and we talk about these sprays that we have. You're coming into the masjid, you're getting sanitized by a spray in the masjid that has alcohol. According to some fuqaha, I'm not sure. It might be possible that that's actually considered a problem. Right? So how do you, because the discussion of alcohol, and I'm not an expert in the field, that's. I was hoping that inshallah it would be nice to have somebody like Mufti Ismail himself, or another scholar or experts in the field to actually address the matter a bit more thorough, because I obviously just did research. This took me, because you read so much, and just the reading clouds your mind. I don't know if I show you, the reading affects your mind. You start reading, think, okay, how do I present this properly? That's why last week, I did not present on this. Even though initially I intended to do so. I intended to just discuss alcohol first and then discuss gambling second. But I was reading and I was realizing, there's so much to discuss, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to present it properly. So I decided to, on Sunday, I was already I'd been reading over the week, and then I thought, I can't do this. I don't have my notes prepared properly. My mind's all over the place. I realized, okay, let me just go into the history of gambling. So that's what I did. So it does have it's an important discussion because of how it impacts us on a daily basis and how challenging it is for us. If even in these flavorings or in food products, if it's made from dates or grapes, automatically it's going to be haram. However, one of the challenges within our society now is that a lot of products are made synthetic, right? So they're not, again, I'm not a food expert or an expert in ingredients, so I can't really comment or explain. But synthetic ingredients might be treated differently than an actual ingredient, right? And so that itself is another issue. So because, as Sheikh pointed out, that, for example, even vanilla essence or soya sauce, right? I mentioned a little bit about the idea that fermentation doesn't always necessitate intoxicants. Doesn't mean that if you ferment something that is going to automatically become an intoxicant, right? And so I'm just going to present another fatwa here, which is on vinegar, right? Because vinegar itself is a question, right? Right. So there was a question that was asked, and it was pointed out. Vinegar is produced by two successive microbial processes. The first being an alcoholic fermentation, which is haram, and the second is an oxidation of alcohol by acetobacter, when its molecular structure is changed and it ceases to be an intoxicant. Other varieties of vinegar are produced from beetroot, tarragon, and alcoholic spirits. In vinegar, the intoxicating factor is destroyed by the microbial process of oxidation, hence it becomes permissible. Islam permits any variety of vinegar to be used as a condiment or preservative. And then the question was, what about white wine vinegar? Well, it's the same, right? As long as a vinegar naturally occurs, right? So vinegars can be produced from intoxicants. It was originally an intoxicant, then it lost its intoxicating property, right? It's no longer an intoxicant. So even though it's fermented, it's no longer an intoxicant, right? And so this is also what happens within baked products. You can get fermentation that takes place because of the yeast and the sugars, but it doesn't mean that just because fermentation has taken place, that it's going to be haram to consume. It's not, right? Even if there is small amounts of alcohol within it, it's not going to be considered, it's too minimal to intoxicate. And we just learned the 4 conditions. And so it's not going to be something that's going to be problematic. And this is where the non-Muslims get confused about Islam. So on these non-Muslim websites, sometimes you'll find that, oh, like how in the world are they going to produce, for Muslims, because alcohol is found in so many things, how do you avoid all of that? They actually quoted, it's sinful for Muslims to consume alcohol. And they're talking about, breads and flavorings and soft drinks and soya sauce. There's a discussion about soya sauce, right? Because in soya sauce, there was a discussion that was more common previously. Is soya sauce permissible to consume? Because it ferments, but it doesn't ferment in the same way. It doesn't become an intoxicant. So it's not considered to be haram. So this is when it comes to vinegar. So white wine vinegar is completely fine to consume as long as that white wine became vinegar naturally, right? And so other vinegars would be the same sort of issue, right? Let me see what else do I have here. Yeah, so with soya sauce, it says soya sauce, some of the companies brew them, causing fermentation. Would that be permitted? The answer is the process of fermentation does not cause a product to become impermissible, haram to consume. The problem of whether the product turns into wine or intoxicates wine. Imam Quduri says, when wine becomes vinegar, it is lawful. It is not disapproved to make wine into vinegar. Prophet ﷺ himself consumed vinegar, and he actually mentioned ni'mal idam al-khal, how great of a curry is vinegar, right? So that's a question with regards to that. So this is a little bit of the discussion with regards to alcohol. There must be a lot more, but I'm not going to go into much more. There are organizations like the Halal Monitoring Authority, right, which are in the process of certifying products and actually do assist in ingredient checks and explanation of that. And so they would be individuals to contact if people have questions with regards to ingredients. They might be able to assist, right? They have a contact page on their website, and you can find, more information through them. So this is as far as alcohol goes. Like I said, there'll be much more to discuss with regards to alcohol. I'm not going to go into it right now, inshallah. With regards to gambling, and I'm going to try to make this very quick and brief, inshallah. We learned last week that there was 4 necessary ingredients for a transaction to be considered gambling. A, it's a transaction between 2 or more people. B, in this transaction, in order to gain someone else's wealth, one places his wealth at stake, whether actually or by promising to pay it later. Gaining of another's wealth is contingent upon some uncertain event in the future, and both possibilities of it occurring and not occurring are present. D, the wealth which one puts at stake is either lost completely without anything in return, and because of which one suffers a complete loss, or it brings with it some wealth of the other person without giving anything in return, because of which the other person suffers a complete loss. So any transaction that has the above 4 mentioned elements will be considered a transaction of gambling, hence unlawful. After understanding the above mentioned, again, this is another fatwa that I'm reading off of because it's easy. It's another friend of mine in the UK who's put this together, Mufti Muhammad ibn Adam. After understanding the above mentioned explanation regarding the definition of gambling, let's now look at its various forms. Basically, there are 2 fundamental formations of gambling. Number 1, the first form of gambling is when no party is obliged to pay any amount for certain. Rather, the payment of each party is dependent upon an uncertain event in the future. In this case, the gambler does not stake his money initially. Rather, the money is put up at stake by promising to pay later. For example, person A and person B compete in a race with the promise that of the loser paying the winner $100. In this example, there's no certainty of payment from any one party. Rather, the payment is contingent from both sides on winning and losing. Right? So whoever loses has to pay. It could be person A, it could be person B. At this moment, nobody knows. Also included in this category is the betting that takes place in horse racing and various other sports. For example, person A says to person B that if team X wins the match, I'll pay you $100. But if team X loses, you will have to pay me $100. This will be gambling, hence unlawful. It is for this reason that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu said, chess is the gambling of the non-Arabs. Imam Bayhaqi recorded this in his Shu'ab al-Iman. Now, is chess not permissible then? So, if it is played with money, it is not permissible. And if it's not played for money, then it's a game. There is permissibility in there. However, because it resembles something that could be haram, it is best avoided. The question comes in the same way with regards to something like Monopoly. Is Monopoly haram? Right? The game of Monopoly, is something that's commonly played. Maybe people even have it at home. It's where, there is no actual money, but there is money, in the game, paper money that the game itself has produced that a person gets, and then they are risking it by doing different things. And so it itself is not haram, as the scholars state, but it does produce a challenge, towards the nafs, greed of the nafs, the desire for money, the love of money, the love of property, the desire to destroy somebody else's wealth, the desire to for a person to own everything. These type of things are challenging. And so, people ask the question, for example, can you play poker without money? Can you play, playing cards without money? So within itself, it's a game. So from that perspective, it could be fine to play. But we know it resembles something which is haram, right? The game of poker generally is played with money, right? The game of playing cards are generally played with money. And so it's something to be mindful about and to be conscious of. And so in that same question, a young kid asked me, a young man asked me a couple of days ago, that what if you get, video games and you get money within that video game to play, the video game with, like you earn certain money and then you bet with that on certain things. And so it's a challenge, right? These are the world that we live in, right? Our kids are being challenged by these situations, right? And so definitely it should be avoided, but it's obviously not as simple as that. Right? So it's not permissible as a game within itself, but it's obviously teaching bad morals, and that's obvious. But it's very hard for our young people to deal with these situations. So Sheikh goes on to say, however, it should be noted that in order for this type of bet to be considered gambling, there should be a two-way bet. If a one-way bet is made, it will not be considered gambling, hence lawful. For example, person A says to person B that if team X wins, I will pay you $100. But if team X loses, you don't pay anything. This is a one-way bet and not considered by the jurist fuqaha to be gambling. The reason being is that in order for a transaction of gambling to transpire, the wealth of both parties should be at stake. A one-way bet is akin to one making a vow of paying someone money if such and such a thing occurs. Right? So if you tell somebody, oh, if you pass your driving exam, I'm going to give you $100. So that's not, gambling, right? If he passes, he gets $100. If he doesn't, he doesn't get it. So that's the same way. So if a team X wins, I'm going to give you $100. That's the same sort of thing, right? It's not going to be considered gambling. Also, if a third person is not taking part in the sport, vows to give the winner a prize, then this is also permitted and not considered to be gambling, right? So person A and person B are the ones that look, is this team going to win? Person A is like, yeah, it's going to win. Person B is like, no, it's not going to win. Person C is not interested in the whole discussion. So I'll say, okay, person A wins, team A wins, I'm going to give, both of you $100. So now he's not part of the discussion, right? He's external to it. They're not dealing with him. And so if a third person is not taking part in the sport, vows to give the winner a prize, then this is also permitted and not considered to be gambling, right? So person A and person B are going to race. And person C, who's not racing with them, says, well, whoever wins, I'm going to give you $100. So that's fine. 2, the second form of gambling is where payment is certain from one side and uncertain from the other, right? So remember, form 1 was where there was payment from either side, right? Possible. Or, person A and person B are going to race, they bet that whoever wins gets $100. The loser has to pay. For the second form of gambling is where payment is certain from one side and uncertain from the other. The one paying for certain is actually staking his wealth, in that it may bring more wealth or it may be totally lost. This is probably the most widespread type of gambling and has many different forms. In this category, we have the prevalent forms of insurance, right? So insurance, car insurance, house insurance, these are challenges. In that the premiums are paid for certain, whereas the return is uncertain. You may lose all the premiums you paid or may receive in return more than what you paid. This is one of the reasons why insurance has been declared unlawful by the scholars. Now that's going to bring up open a can of worms. I don't know if it's going to open a can of worms or this is going to bring up other questions. I'm not going to answer any questions right now, by the way. Right. Also included are the various types of lotteries, raffles, and sweepstakes, where one has to pay to be included in the draw, whether this payment is in the form of entrance fees, purchasing of tickets, or any other form. The reason being is that the total accumulated cash will be distributed amongst those whose names emerge in the draw as the prize winners, which is clear gambling. If one's name does not emerge in the prize draw, one will lose one's wealth without anything in return. And this is where the challenge, people think, oh, it's just $1. What's the big deal? I just lost $1. It's not that much of money. But it doesn't matter whether it's $1. It doesn't matter whether it's 10 cents. It doesn't matter whether it's 5 cents. You can't say 1 cent anymore because it doesn't happen. But in the lowest says 5 cents. Any monetary amount, right, or anything of value. Similarly, various types of crosswords and puzzles are published in newspapers and magazines, and it is advertised that whoever solves them correctly and encloses a certain amount of money stands a chance of winning the prize, a great prize. This is also gambling, because one is enclosing some money, even though it may be a minimum amount, so that it brings with it more or it's lost altogether. Yes, if no money was demanded to be included in the prize draw, that would not constitute gambling, and hence permitted. This is also when, for example, people go to like Canada's Wonderland and there's games. Shoot the ball, you get a teddy bear, but you pay for that. Then that's gambling, right? Because now you're paying to get a prize. Either you're going to pay and you're not going to get it. You get at, for example, Walmart or some of these stores, you get like these machines. You put 25 cents in, you've got a joystick, you could try to move around, you could pick up something. That's gambling, right? So that's why I said these things are more prevalent than we think. They're more common in our lives than we actually think that they are. Because, yeah, maybe a Muslim's not going to go to a casino and play, right? Or go to a horse race. But these situations people don't realize are also included within. So if people go to Canada's Wonderland or go to any other theme park and they pay and there's a prize, the prize doesn't have to be money. The prize can be anything. It's still going to be gambling. At times, various teams take part in a sports tournament, with each team required to pay a certain entrance fee. Thereafter, the winning team is given a prize or a trophy purchased through the money accumulated from each team's contribution. This is also gambling, hence unlawful. You actually find sometimes Muslim tournaments like this, Muslim basketball tournament. You get a team, pay $100, and then they're going to buy a trophy from that. Everybody's $100 together. They're going to buy a trophy, and then they're going to give that trophy to the winner. That's still gambling. Another example is of the various types of competitions that take place regularly on radio, TV, etc. A question is posed to the listeners or the viewers with a promise that whoever phones in with the correct answer and his name is drawn, he will receive a ticket for 2 people in such and such a country, for example. Now, many people think this great offer is only a phone call away. And who knows, I might be the winner. I won't lose anything if I don't win because I only have to call and give them the correct answer. What these people don't realize, however, is that the charge of the call is greatly increased in order to facilitate the acquisition of the award. So normally the charge to make such a call would be, for example, 10 British pence or 10 cents. While one is being charged £1 here, $1 here. Hence, the remaining 90 cents is used in the acquisition of the winner's reward. What's more, not all of the money is used in order to acquire the prize. Rather, these companies who offer such competitions keep a large sum of money to themselves, and then with the remaining sum, they acquire the prize. At times, they keep all the money to themselves without even drawing the name of the winner, hence deceiving everyone. Therefore, the above is clearly and categorically a form of gambling and must be avoided by the Muslims. One brother, despite being advised not to take part in a certain competition, still went ahead and called the organizers with the correct answer. It was advertised that the callers will be charged £1 a minute, meaning $1 a minute. This brother ended up paying $30 in total after having to wait on the line for a long time. Right? So this is Sheikh explaining. People didn't even consider this. They said, just a phone call. They didn't realize that they're actually being charged for this. A very important aspect should be firmly understood here. That is, in order for a transaction to be considered a form of gambling, it is necessary that the money which one puts at stake is paid without any return, as mentioned earlier. Thus, if one receives the full return for the money put at stake, it cannot be gambling. Rather, it will not even classify as placing one's money at stake because one has received the full return of one's money. For example, if one purchased a ticket for entrance into an exhibition or bazaar, with the organizers of the event promising a prize for the holder of the lucky number on one of the tickets, then that cannot be called clear gambling because the ticket holder has paid in order to enter the exhibition and he has received the full return of his money. However, if one's intention was not to enter the exhibition, rather to win the prize, then one will be indulging in a kind of gambling, though not open gambling. Right? This is the same as Tim Hortons roll up the rim. If a person, when Tim Hortons roll up the rim goes around, if a person goes to Tim Hortons with the sole intention of, I'm purchasing this, they know what's in their heart. I'm purchasing this coffee or French vanilla or whatever else, donut, Timbit, you can purchase a bagel because, if I get it, it's got to be a roll up the rim. So it's got to be one of those beverage products. I'm going to try to roll it up, and so I can win. Then that's gambling, right? That's gambling. But if they paid for the actual liquid, they paid for the coffee. I want to drink coffee. I want to purchase it. They drank the coffee. Then they flipped up, or they didn't even. I mean, it'd be foolish of the person to try to roll it up while they haven't finished drinking the coffee. They might spill it. Right? They finished drinking the coffee, then they rolled it up, and they won. That's not gambling. Why? Because the person intentionally bought it for the coffee. They wanted to drink coffee, or they wanted to drink the French vanilla, or they wanted to drink the tea. So this is also a challenge for us as Muslims. Another example is that of manufacturers, in order to attract customers, place certain lucky tokens or numbers in their produced items, with the lucky winner receiving a prize. The ruling here is that if the cost of these items is similar to its cost when the prize winning scheme is not in operation, that it would not classify as gambling. For example, a bar of chocolate is normally sold at 50 British pence, 50 cents, and the price remains the same even with the prize winning scheme in operation. Then to take part in the scheme and win the prize would be permitted. The reason being is that one has received the full return of one's money, which in this case is the chocolate bar. Hence, one is not placing one's money at stake. However, if the cost of the item is raised due to the prize-winning scheme, for example, the chocolate bar is sold at 60 cents, with the promise of an award for the lucky ticket holder, then this would be considered gambling because one is receiving the full return for only the 50 cents invested, because that's how much the chocolate bar was worth. And the extra remaining 10 cents is put at stake. If one did not win any prize, the 10 cents would be lost. And in the case of winning, the 10 cents would bring with it more than its value. Right? So, right. Conclusion: the above was a detailed explanation with regard to gambling and its various forms. As you can see, there are many ways and forms of gambling. At times, people do not even realize that they are involved in gambling and committing a major sin. And one needs to be vigilant. Especially our kids playing online games. Just a couple of days ago, a young man told me a betting company, reached out to him on his Instagram page that he just has to advertise for them and they would give him some money. All he has to do is allow them to advertise on his page and he would get money. And it's lucrative. These kids are making money off of YouTube and making money off of social media, and money's become so easy for them, which is challenging, which is problematic. And so they find, they end up getting themselves involved in these transactions, not knowing that they're gambling. Gambling discourages honest labor and encourages greed, materialism, and discontent. It encourages get rich quick thinking. It encourages the get rich quick thinking and reckless investment of God-given resources. It is in essence a form of robbery, which is stealing. Each gambler wants to get the prize money for himself or herself. And that's why we have this whole issue, even in drugs and being sold in our communities to young people involved in these things, want to get rich quickly, these are serious matters that our communities are facing that really need to be discussed. And so there's one final element to this discussion that's not necessarily within the tafsir, but definitely something that is worthy of being discussed, and that's the addictions element. Right? So many of our kids, so many of our people are addicted to different things. Because intoxicants, this is the impact of intoxicants, right? And there's one, as I said, this ayah that we only covered a portion of the ayah. The ayah actually continues, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has added another portion to this ayah, which is talking about expenditure, right? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. The ayah continues. This doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at the end of the discussion of khamr and alcohol and gambling. Rather, Allah says, and they ask you also about spending. مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. What should they spend? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers. Why? Why within one verse, Allah brings up two seemingly different discussions as one verse? There's obviously a point behind it, and I didn't intend to mention that or go into it today. But our Quran and our Deen is so beautiful in its guidance for us, and it's just something that we're so neglectful of. And our young people, the societies that we live in, you can see the amount of alcohol that's within our societies, the amount of gambling that's within our societies, right? And that which is not necessarily in its clear form as gambling or alcohol is still something that our children, our young people are so, and not just young people, even old people, and everybody is so challenged by. But young people even more so, because their world is a different world. It's natural for a young person to be, attracted to maybe video games, to social media. It's just their world, right? You can't blame them. They're at a certain age, and there's certain things that surround them. But it doesn't mean that halal or haram becomes halal, right? And this is where they need help, right? And addictions are becoming very, very problematic, right? You know, spending habits, right? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings in يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. And so, you know, addictions. There's so many of our young people, unfortunately, boys and girls, involved in, you know, addicted to, definitely, you know, addicted to intoxicants, addicted to gambling, but addicted in other ways as well, to things which are very harmful for them. And so these need to be discussed, right? Need to be brought out in the open and dealt with, because it's a situation. You know, I dealt with a marital case a couple of months ago, where the young woman was like, you know, the wife was like, you know, I work 2 jobs, and the husband, you know, both of us are students. We're full-time students. I work two jobs, and he's playing video games. You know, he's a full-time student, but on top of that, yes, you know, you do need some, you know, relaxation. You want to relax a little bit, you know, fine, it's understandable. But it gets to a point where how does a person differentiate between what's good for this person, what's bad for this person? Those are all the discussions, and, you know, added discussions to this. And I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us, guides us in dealing with these matters in the manner that we are able to be guided, protected, because these are serious issues. And they're just going to increase in our communities because this is the context that we live in. Pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us out of that. Finish off with a short dua. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam. Tabarakta rabbana wa ta'ala ya dhal jalali wal ikram. اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين. But if anybody has questions in regards to some of these discussions, you're most welcome to email me, and I will try to assist where I can. People might have questions. I definitely didn't want to answer the questions on insurance and insurances, but, you know, extended warranties and these things could also come under these type of discussions. But Khair, if you have questions, you're welcome to ask, and if I could assist you, then I'll try to do so. I mean, barakallah fikum. I benefited from just the fact that I had to research a little bit. So hopefully this was beneficial for everybody. Jazakallah khair.